Recently, I had the chance to sit down and chat with Katie from Life in the Mundane. She is someone that I have followed online for several years since I first started homeschooling, and I've always appreciated her very thorough curriculum reviews, her practical tips for moms, and just all the encouragement and wisdom that she shares on her channel. In this conversation, we talk about things like her guidelines for choosing homeschool curriculum, how to handle homeschooling during a hard season of life, and so much more. I know you're going to get a lot out of this conversation, moms, so let's dive in. Welcome to the Morning Basket Music Channel. I'm Leann, a homeschool mom of two beautiful kiddos and a music educator. And today I'm so excited to be joined by a special guest, Katie from Life in the Mundane. So welcome, Katie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. If you're not already following Katie online, I'm going to be sure to put links to all her different social media channels so you can follow what she's doing. I just think Katie is such a wealth of knowledge and wisdom when it comes to all things homeschooling. Plus, as a bonus, she has the perspective of being a second-generation homeschooler herself, which we are going to touch on today. So, Katie, why don't you start us off just by introducing us to yourself and your family and kind of where you're at in your homeschool journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have been married now for almost 17 years.
Great.
I have 6 kids and they're all getting ready to have birthdays. So I'm gonna tell you their new birthdays. So it'll be 16,
Okay.
15, 14, 13, and then big gap, and then an 8 and a 7-year-old. So
Wow,
we've been
okay.
doing this for quite a while.
Mhm.
We have a variety of different needs in our home. So I have a lot of experience with neurotypical and neurodivergent kids.
Mhm.
And yeah, we're jumping into second year of high school right now. So it's a
And getting
whole
ready to have a driver too, right?
yes. Yeah,
That's
actually my son got his driver's license last week.
Oh,
So
that's exciting.
yesterday he officially left the house without any
Yeah.
parents for a couple of hours. And I was like, all right, this is a whole new season.
That's awesome. I love that. All right, so here's why I'd like to start today. Tell me about your experience being homeschooled. I assume it was all the way through. Is that right?
Actually, it started in my third grade year is
Okay.
when it started. Yep.
Okay. So what was your experience like being homeschooled yourself, and how has that kind of shaped the way you've chosen to educate your own kids?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of funny. My mom would put herself in the category of a reluctant homeschooler.
Hmm.
A lot of people who started homeschooling during COVID probably can relate to that to some
Right.
extent.
Sure.
She was never like, hey, this is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. Actually, at the time that I started homeschooling, it was still a little taboo. Like you didn't tell your neighbors, you didn't tell
Right.
others around you. We never left the house before 3 p.m. ever because we would get all the questions.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it was quite the experience. But I am the oldest of 7 kids. At the time my mom started homeschooling, she only had 6, and my brother and I were in private school. And then when she realized that my twin brothers were coming up, and right after that, there was 2 more, she was like, even with a pastor's salary discount, my dad's a pastor. He's like,
Hmm.
there's no way we can do private school for 6
Yeah.
kids. So it was sort of an out of necessity thing. And then it became a lifelong passion. And she's now a
Mhm.
veteran homeschool mom that has homeschooled and graduated all 7 kids. Um,
Wow.
so
That's
I
awesome.
I enjoy the fact that I get the experience of somebody who did go to traditional school for kindergarten through second grade. I was homeschooled then from third grade to eighth grade. And then my mom experienced something that a lot of homeschool moms experience. And they were like, I can do this, I got this, but there's no way I can do high school. And so she sent us back to private school and
Hmm.
was like, all right, I'm done. I can't do it. And we're there for ninth and 10th grade. And then I begged to come back home. I was
Mm.
bored to tears.
Wow.
I was like, please, I could be done with the schoolwork by noon and I'm here all day. And then I come home and I have homework. And she was like, okay, I think I can do this. And now
Mm.
homeschooling high school is one of her favorite ages now
Oh, wow.
after
That's
doing it
awesome.
with all 7 kids. So I've
Yeah.
gotten that experience at both sides. And I would say the biggest thing it's really influenced me in or taught me has been just to breathe and to
Hmm.
relax. And
Hmm.
that we're not responsible for infusing all the knowledge that our kids need into them. We're just responsible for teaching our kids how to learn and how to have a love of learning. And if they know those 2 things, they can go find any information that there might be holes from in the future.
Right.
And I think that was really helpful. I think that was something my mom learned when she brought us home in high school was she didn't have to know all the things. She just
Yeah.
facilitated the learning. If there was something she truly was unable to teach, like Spanish, she had a different mom. She switched out and she taught this mom's daughter and us. She taught us a leadership class, and then this mom taught us Spanish. So it worked out kind of beautifully with that.
That's awesome. And I really props to her. When I hear about experiences from people doing it in early days, it's just so different, like now it's almost like trendy to homeschool.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so back then, I mean, just like the limited choices that you had for curriculum, it just like you had to really want it. You had to
Yes.
really want it back then. So that's amazing. Props to her. Okay. So one of the things, Katie, that I really appreciate about your YouTube channel, besides, yes, you give the practical tips and encouragement for moms and resources and all those things, you also don't shy away from talking about really hard things and being vulnerable with people in front of a screen, which is hard to do. But I think that it helps a lot of moms, including myself, be able to relate to you. So here's just a part of my story recently. We are coming out of a really hard semester. Just a lot of personal things happened in the spring. We lost my father-in-law in February. About a week later, my husband lost his job right after that. And then that was followed by a period of sickness. It just was like this perfect storm of things happening. I mean, I know you can relate because, again, you've shared a lot about, medical things and special needs and all of that. So let's talk to that mom for a minute who is going through her own hard season and is feeling either like, we're not getting anything done. I'm failing my kids in homeschooling. I'm not doing enough. What would you say to her?
Yeah, I think that first of all, we always step back and look at the definition of what is enough, right?
Mm.
We need to make sure that we are meeting our legal requirements. Like I always
Right.
start with that, but we don't have to do anything above and beyond that, especially in a hard season. And that can look really different. So you might be required by law to cover certain subjects, but they usually don't require you to do it in a specific curriculum or for a specific amount of time. And so you have some flexibility there. I think another big thing, especially when you're kind of coming out of one of those seasons, is to really sort of set yourself up. I talk about this all the time about having kind of 3 schedules, an A schedule, a B schedule, and a C schedule. So an A schedule is like everything is going perfect. It's your ideal day. The kids' attitudes are great. Your attitude is great. The schedule is clear. Here's what we're going to get done today. And then having a B schedule or a C schedule, that is like bare minimums. What is the absolute bare minimum that we can do in order to accomplish what we need to accomplish? And then the B schedule is somewhere in between that. And I think that's really helpful because sometimes we feel like if every day can't be an A day, which by the way, no matter what season you're in, it never is going to always be an A day.
Exactly.
That it's no good, or that we should never try to do the things we would do on an A day because we can't consistently do that every day. And so I think when we realize that homeschooling is kind of a mix of all 3 of those days, and it's okay if there's a season where we're just doing our C schedule and then we can add in those things later. I think that's really helpful to hear and to know because we set ourselves up with unrealistic expectations sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I love thinking through it that way. That's going to cause me to like write some things down
Yes.
about different types of schedule. Yeah, what is the bare minimum? And also for me personally, it's like it really was a short amount of time. It felt like it went on and on just because of everything. But also when I go back and reflect on what that month or so was like for us, I think about like the unspoken lessons that my kids learned, life lessons during that time. They were watching us care for an aging parent for the first time. They saw how my husband was dealing with grief, and that whole process. With the job stuff, like they heard us talking about finances and, how is this going to look? And it's just like, to me, those are things that, this, like, you cannot teach that from a textbook. Like, you have to experience it. You have to go through it. So yeah, I think but I love to think about different schedules and what is enough. That's good advice.
Well, and I think sometimes too, if we wrote down what we actually did, we realize how much it actually is, So in the first seasons, it's like, okay, we didn't do XYZ curriculum, but we listened to a read aloud in the car on the way to the doctor's appointment. Okay.
Yes.
We had those conversations about grief and we interacted in that way. Like, I think sometimes if it's not what we originally planned, we just think we did nothing, and that's not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Katie, on your channel, you do a ton of curriculum reviews, which have been very helpful for me to go back and watch when I'm kind of in that season of making decisions. So, with having several different age kids, tell us what are some of your guidelines when you're trying to pick out curriculum for the upcoming semester or school year? What do you kind of
Yeah.
follow?
So I always tell people, think about your budget first. If that is a big priority for you, you don't want to start researching stuff that's outside. It's just like buying a house, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, I'll just look at everything because you're going to fall in love with something you can't afford. And then it's going to cause discontentment. And that's just not going to be good. So if
Hmm.
you have a strict budget for that, start with that. But then I personally look at what would be best with my kids' specific learning styles. And paired with that, how much in teacher intensiveness is required. Now, I actually use several teacher intensive programs, but I recognize that I have 6 kids and there's only one of me.
Right.
And I work part-time. Like there's a lot of other
Hmm.
things happening in my home. And so I recognize that each kid can probably only realistically have in the younger elementary ages, probably 2 subjects that are super teacher intensive. Now I'm kindergarten age, more of it's going to be teacher intensive, but it's going to be shorter.
Yeah.
But as they get into that more meaty elementary age and middle school, I can only afford to do that. So I try to kind of piece that together when I'm thinking through it. And I go, okay, by choosing to do a teacher intensive program, that means I need to find something that's a little less teacher intensive
Hmm.
in the future. I don't know if that makes sense, but it
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
helps me to budget my time as
Hmm.
well as my money. And then with that, just looking for those things that are exciting to my kids that will work with their special needs with that. Some kids need a ton of review. So I look for those programs that have the maximum amount of review. And other kids are like, you taught it to me, I got it, moving on.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's
Sure.
so it's just a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
trial and error. And I say for new moms, do your best to pick it, but just jump in and use it and you'll kind of figure it out as you go. There's some element that you can't prepare for. You just have to kind of try and don't
Sure.
beat yourself up if what you picked first doesn't work.
Hmm. Okay, so that's gonna be my follow-up question. When do you give yourself permission to quit using something for whatever reason you think it's not working?
In the early years, I probably switched too fast and too often. So I usually try to give it 6 weeks. If there have been a few exceptions to that rule, obviously.
Hmm.
But for the most part, I try to give it 6 weeks, partially because most curriculums start with like review. And so you don't really get into the meat of the curriculum until you get a couple of weeks in.
Yeah.
And so I try to kind of give that. And then at the end of that 6 weeks, if it's not working, I'm starting to think through, okay, is this something I can adapt or do I need to completely veer off from it? Is it something I could
Yeah.
add something to, take something away from to make it work for us? And I really try, again, wisdom over the years, not the way I
Hmm.
started,
Yeah.
but wisdom over the years is really try to verbalize exactly what is not working with it. Because there have been so often that I'm like, I abandon something because something flashier comes out. And I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh, but that looks fun. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with the program.
Right.
Or I'm just like, it's not work. It's just not. And my husband's like,
Mhm.
but what? What exactly is not working? Is it too much writing? Not enough writing? Is it too much review? Not enough review? And you really kind of have to narrow that down to be able to make an educated decision going
Hmm.
forward.
Yeah, I think that's important. You have to get curious about, yeah, when you say something is not working. My own example of that, writing has probably been the subject in our homeschool that has always been really tricky to navigate. It's not my kid's favorite subject. But this past year, we were using a certain program. I didn't love it. They didn't love it, but it was fine. It got the job done. And even though they would sometimes like grumble about it, just not liking it in general, I was like, I'm looking at your work and I can see you making progress.
Yeah,
I can see
exactly.
that this is effective. You have learned things. Your writing has gotten stronger. And it kind of like came to a head for us really in like the month of April when it's like we're already so close to the end of the school year. And so I think it's just burnout in general. So I told my kids, like, we're going to see this thing through. It doesn't mean we have to use it next year. We're switching away from it. But let's just at least complete this one. Whereas it was probably like 2 years ago, I think it was my son's third grade year. We had started a well-known writing program. I'm not going to name any names, but it's very a respectable program. I loved it personally. I thought this is going to be the best thing. I spent all the time researching, spent the money, and it just led to tears every single day for about 2 months. And at that point, I don't think I had ever quit any curriculum. And so I was like, am I allowed to do this? Like, has this just been a giant waste of time? And honestly, so I started to get curious and ask those questions, like, what is it about this that's not working? And I don't think it had anything to do with the program, honestly. I think it's still great, and we might come back to it in the future. I think just developmentally, he was not ready. It was just like pushing too much too soon.
That's a thing that a lot of people do, is they'll like label something as like, oh, this was not good, this did not work. And sometimes that is the case. I've come across a few, but 9 times out of 10, it's like, this curriculum was not good for this kid, or this curriculum was not good for this season.
Right.
Or, I couldn't give enough to it, or my child wasn't absorbing in that way, or they're just not developmentally ready. So I think there's no shame in switching. I think we have to be careful that we want to give our kids consistency, and there's a good lesson to be learned in pushing through, right? There's a good lesson in learning and perseverance. And, we might not like this, but this is what God's called us to do. And so we're going to do it. But also it's okay to change if it's just really not working. Cause I've definitely had curriculums where I'm like, nobody's getting anything. We're having tears every day. It's really frustrating.
We're pulling teeth over here. Yeah, totally understand. Okay, so let's shift away for a minute from curriculum to talking about extracurricular activities. So you mentioned you have 6 kids. Is that right? Okay. I know, like, for some larger families, when their kids are little, they might say something like, we're all going to play soccer this season because it's just going to make it easier for us, and we're all going to the same place at the same time. But I imagine that gets a lot harder when they get older and they have different interests, and it's just not feasible anymore. So what does that look like for you? When your kids express interest in a sport or an activity or whatever, how do you juggle that?
Yeah, so we're a little unique in that situation. One of the things we stepped back early on in our marriage and parenting was to step back and look at, like, what are our priorities and what matters most. Because my husband came from a family where sports were king. Like, everybody was in sports all year round. They did traveling sports. Like, the whole family revolved around sports. I came from a family where it was like, hey, you're interested in basketball? Let's find this church league that lasts 6 weeks. And then we're done. Like, it was a very casual thing. People were in and out. They didn't really care as much. And so we were like, we kind of weighed those back and forth. We were like, okay, well, one, teaches discipline and working hard and mastering a skill. And one, can give you opportunities to try a lot of things and not pigeonhole you into one area. And there are pros and cons. But ultimately, we decided that, our church commitments came first. So we plug in our church commitments first, and very involved in church. Then the health and well-being of our family became a second big priority, as I have a child with a lot of medical needs and several kids who have different special needs. So we were always like, okay, therapy appointments, doctor's appointments, like those kind of get plugged in. Then whatever's left, we budget that out as far as our time in other extracurriculars. So what that's ended up looking like is none of my kids have actually ever done a formal sport. But we give our kids lots of opportunities to explore and to look into things they're interested in. So I have a son that is very interested in art. He is self-taught. He has spent hours and hours and hours poring over YouTube videos, books. He has taken a few online courses now that have taught him more, and we give him every opportunity we can to get into an art show. We look for opportunities for that. We have another son that's interested in other things, so we give him those materials. So our goal is, we understand that in the season we're in, now with having a driver, things might change a little bit, but with the season we're in right now, we're like, we understand we can't sign up for long-term commitments or bigger time commitments. But what we can do is we can really supply you with the tools and the resources to learn and grow. So my kids play sports 100% in the yard with each other, with friends. We get together and we have hangout times with other friends and family where they can, do those kinds of things, but it's just not in a formal capacity. So yeah, I think it's all about prioritizing and figuring out what time you actually have and what's most important in that season.
I love that. Okay, so I want to reference an older video that you have. I think it was out last year, but it is pertinent to my season of life right now about homeschooling middle schoolers. I am going to have a 6th grader this year. And so I went back and watched it recently because you just offered a ton of good advice in that one. I think for some reason, like, when we pull out the label middle school and put it on a kid, it's just like everything feels suddenly bigger and more serious and like, oh my gosh. And I don't know if that's like a result of, I come from public school background, and it's like the way things are these days, we have fifth grade graduation, and it's like we act like they're going to college all of a sudden. It's just, it is a big shift, but at the same time, like it doesn't happen overnight. I know that. So I would just love to hear some of your tips, like what have you done with your own middle schoolers, well, now high schoolers, just to help that like transition be successful and easier on both of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had 4 middle schoolers now. And so we've had a lot of experience in this. I think the biggest thing I always tell parents is don't expect your 6th grader to act and to perform in the way that your 8th grader will eventually act. Like 6th to 8th grade is actually a huge developmental difference. And so the big thing is yes, we're working towards independence, but we need to kind of handhold at the beginning, and then we let go a little bit more until we get to that high school where they're doing a lot more independently. And I think that's something that myself, I felt in that. I was like, here's a planner, here's here's
Yeah.
what you need to do, here's your checklist, get it done. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
So I think that we need to walk alongside our kids with those things. I think it's incredibly important to teach our kids how to use a planner. I think it's important to teach them and to come alongside them with breaking down tasks into smaller bite-sized pieces. Assignments can get a little bit bigger where it's not just write a paragraph on this, but it's write a paper, write a research paper that's, 6 pages long or whatever it might be. You got to teach them how to break down those tasks. So coming alongside them is good. Checking in with them regularly is important, even though they're older. And I think that my friend Mindy over at Redefining School, she describes it like this. She's like, think of middle school as like a pregnant woman. There's like a lot of growth that's happening and a lot of things change in that time. But she's like, there's also a ton of hormones and your body is just like flipping out. And that's very, very, very true. So they're learning a lot, but they're also like going through one of the most awkward stages that they're going to go through. Their humor changes, their bodies are changing, their sleep patterns are changing. They're going to start staying up later. They're going to start all of these different things. And so when you're thinking about the changes in homeschooling, don't think about just dumping as much responsibility on them as possible, but really walking them through those changes and helping them to grow and develop in those areas.
It's almost like I need to go back and think about, remember when I tried to put too much on my son as a kindergartner? Because I thought he was just suddenly ready for all the school. It feels similar. It's like, okay, we got to slow this down.
And it'll be the same thing when they go into high school, where you'll be like, how much am I supposed to put on you?
Right. Yeah, because I'm sure, well, and it depends on the kid too. It's like you have to adjust your own expectations each time. It's like, what can they realistically handle? I want to encourage independence, but I don't want to overwhelm them and just it'd be a disaster. So yeah,
absolutely.
All right, so let's kind of wrap this up. Thinking about, you've been homeschooling for over a decade now.
Yeah,
which is probably wild to think about. But if you could go back to those early days, talk to young homeschool mom Katie, who was all excited to start and had all these ambitions, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give her?
I would say consistency is far more important than what you're actually doing. And that's maybe a little overstated in the sense that, yes, you should be doing something good and positive and whatnot, but consistently showing up for your kids. The days might look a little bit different. Your curriculum is going to look different. Again, those ABC schedules are going to look different, but consistently showing up is so incredibly important. And I think I fought for so long trying to have that perfect schedule. And when the day started to kind of unravel, I would like pitch it. I'd be like, okay, we're calling it. And again, there are times and days and seasons where that just needs to be the case. But I really didn't see the value in 10 minutes today of a subject. Like there is so much more that can be learned in 10 minutes a day, 4 or 5 days a week, than can be learned in 2 30-minute lessons a week.
Yes.
And so if you feel like homeschooling is overwhelming, scale it back in your time. Still show up and do the subject. But even 5 or 10 minutes is gonna get you somewhere longer, because it's that slow and steady wins the race.
I love that. That's important, especially for new moms to hear, I think. And veteran moms too.
And it's hard. And I want to acknowledge that. Like, that's what I tell myself. it would have
Yeah.
also been incredibly hard. I had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a newborn at one point, and doing anything consistently felt like, I mean, getting to brush my teeth in the morning or getting to like
Yeah.
anything was
Yeah.
a huge deal. But I really do think that I could have relieved some of that pressure if I had just been focusing more on like, we're going to do math, even if it's just one thing, and then we're going to move on just to build that consistency.
Yeah. One of the books that I always recommend to homeschool moms, no matter how long you've been doing it, is Teaching from Rest by Sarah McKenzie. And I think it's like right from the start of that book, she has this quote that says, "The goal is not success, the goal is faithfulness."
Yes.
And that has stuck with me. Like in all those times where I'm like, I'm not doing enough, or we're not checking off all the boxes. It's like you said, just show up, just keep doing what you're doing. Be faithful to what God's called you to do. So yeah, I love that. Okay, before we end our conversation today, I want you to tell our listeners a little bit more about your community that you're a part of called Made to Homeschool, which you can find on your website. I think it's abbreviated M2H. Is that right?
Yes. Well, so you
Okay.
can type the website madetohomeschool.com,
Okay.
or you can look up M2H. But yeah, it's just a community of homeschool moms created by homeschool moms for homeschool moms. And we have a lot of different places. It's off platform of any of the traditional like social media platforms. So there's no spam, there's no negativity allowed at all. And it was created kind of out of the heart and the desire that in the homeschool community, there is so much separation between styles or age groups. Oh, you have preschool kids. Well, I have high school kids. Oh, you're a Charlotte Mason mom. Oh, I'm a classical school mom. Whatever it might be, that it was just like, hey, we all have this common unifying thing of homeschooling our kids and wanting to educate them. And we want that kind of safe space to be able to go and share. And what I've loved about it the most has been that I have 6 kids and my kids have 6 totally different personalities and different styles and different things. So even though I'm an eclectic mom, or I'm a mom who prefers to do workbooks or not do workbooks, I have individual kids that actually fit better in the different styles or the different methods that other moms do. So getting to come together and be like, hey, what are you doing for your kid? I'm like, oh my goodness, that would work really well for this specific child. Whereas what I like to do, my personal bent, works really well for my oldest child or whatever it might be. So it's been like a really beautiful place. We have workshops every Monday that are live. We have lots of opportunity to talk and get together. And yeah, it's just been a really neat opportunity. We actually just came out with a free tier this year, I guess. And with that, any mom can sign up, or dad, actually, for that matter. We actually have a lot of new dads and grandparents.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So they can sign up, and yeah, it's just really neat.
Okay, well, I will be sure to link that in the video description because I'm sure people are going to want to check that out. That sounds amazing. And really, like, I think it's important no matter what stage you're in, it is just so valuable, like this conversation today, just getting to talk to someone who is just a step or two ahead of you, because we all have questions. I imagine even, when my kid's a senior, like I'm still going to have questions.
Sure.
I'm going to be wanting to talk about people who have graduated a kid, what does that look like? So yeah, that's super helpful. Well, Katie, it's been such a pleasure talking to you today. I know that the people listening are going to get so much out of this conversation, and I just want to thank you so much for giving me your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.